If you're someone who actually enjoys planning all of your vacations, but you just don't have the time to do the research right now, then this interview is for you. Welcome aboard, travelers. I'm Christy McCullough with Harbor and Holiday Travel Company. And today I'm going to sit down with Rachel, a busy professional and mom of a toddler who wanted help planning a spring break trip to Utah, where she and her husband and another couple traveled to 3 of the national parks, including Zion, Arches, and Bryce Canyon. Well, Rachel loves the creative side of planning, like dining and excursions, but like so many of my other clients, she just didn't have the time to plan all of the logistics on her own. In this conversation, she shares what it's like to work with a travel agent, how we divided up some of the planning process, and why having that support really made this trip flawless. If you've ever thought, I could plan this trip myself, I just don't have the time, then this interview is for you. Well, welcome. Today I have Rachel Riemenschneider here with me, and she has been a recent client of Harbor and Holiday Travel Company. And she most recently did a spring break trip with another couple to Utah. And so I can't wait to hear all about the trip, the good, the bad, the ugly, and how things went. So, Rachel, tell me, what was the best part of your trip to Utah?
The best part of our trip was definitely the scenery, the formations and the colors, the arches. It's almost as if you're in another universe. It's unlike anything I've ever seen within the United States. And it was very magical and just different. We constantly were saying, I cannot believe these things exist here on Earth. So we were constantly just in awe of the landscape, formations, and colors for sure.
Yeah, and you had a really good view of that because being from Indiana, you flew to Las Vegas, which
We
was a
did.
great airport. Well, actually, you flew from Chicago,
We
right?
did. Yes.
So you flew out of the Chicago airport and nonstop to Las Vegas. So that was a great flight. And then you rented a vehicle.
Hmm.
And so, how did that go? Did that work out okay? Did you
Yeah.
appreciate having you had a larger vehicle? Which one did they end up assigning to you?
The Grand Wagoneer. And it
Ooh.
was magical. Loved it. Yeah, we flew out of Chicago O'Hare and we actually stayed the evening prior to our flight at the Hilton there at the airport, which I highly suggest if you have an early flight because it's an easy transition through a couple tunnels and then you're in the terminal. You actually don't have to exit the hotel to get to the airport. So the flight was pretty direct and easy. Nothing really to report about that. About 4 hours, give or take here and there, but it was an easy transition into Vegas. And when we landed into Vegas, we took the shuttle right over to the rental car place, and everything was ready and set to go. And we picked out the black Grand Wagoneer.
All right. So with 4 adults and then your luggage, you
Yeah.
told me that you and Mandy like to overpack. So I'm
Mhm.
sure you had a big suitcase, as so would I.
Mhm.
And then this was really a road trip. Even though you flew there, this was definitely a road trip. So having a bigger type of vehicle, as we were picking that out for you, I was just like, okay, they need more space.
Mhm.
And, we had even talked about in the preliminary meeting that we had before you took off, your packing list that you might want a cooler, whether you packed it or you buy one. This is a road trip. You're going to need drinks on ice and snacks and all of the things. So was it difficult to fly to do a road trip, or did you feel like you had the things that you needed?
No, it wasn't difficult at all to fly and then go into or transition into a road trip. The car itself was more than enough room. So I had a checked bag, Mandy had a checked bag, Jer had a checked bag, Garrett had a checked bag, and then Garrett and I and Jer also had a carry on. So we plus, your personal items that you're packing in as much as you can. So it's almost like a second carry on. So we had a ton of luggage, to say the least, and it fit with absolutely zero problems. And we even had more room that we needed. We also did a slight upgrade to like the premium SUV, which I hadn't done before. And I also highly suggest if you're going to be doing some kind of road trip where you're in a car a lot. We had all the bells and whistles in the car and we used it and we really enjoyed it. Yes, your packing list was really thorough and we went through it the night before. And as soon as we arrived in Vegas, we left the airport because of pricing, obviously, and stopped at the local convenience store and loaded up on drinks and snacks and then headed on to Zion.
Nice, nice. Okay, so let's talk about Zion.
Mhm.
You had the Red Cliffs Lodge, both at Zion and in Moab. And then you had a different type of lodging at Bryce Canyon. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Mhm.
So let's talk about the hotel. We can talk about both of them since they're the same company, but let's start with Zion. What were your thoughts there?
Okay, so Zion, as far as a community or a city, is much more walkable than I would say Moab is. So coming into the Red Cliffs Lodge at Zion, it was a very quaint and kind of community esque, I guess, like neighborhood esque. And the Red Cliffs Lodge at Zion is at the tail end of the main street, which takes you very close to the entrance to the park. I would say driving, you're there in 2 minutes or less. And it is also very easy to walk to the shuttle access to get you into the park if you wanted to do that and not mess with any parking. But the Red Cliffs Lodge, perfect. Everything was just very well taken care of. The landscape, the impression when you entered into the area in which they checked us in was pristine and smelled good, and they had drinks and there was a little lounge off to the side. The workers at the front desk were so helpful and gave you all the maps and times of the shuttles and things of that nature. And then we entered into our room and it was adorable. Even Mandy sent me a text that day and was like, "This is so cute." So when you enter, you had a little sitting area with like a sectional, a television. The closets were on the right and left for both men and women. And I thought was really cool, just a little tiny touch they had there is that the lights within the closet came on when you opened the door or walked by it. So you weren't trying to like
Wow.
fiddle with the light in the closet, which I thought was pretty unique. They definitely at both places, not just in Zion, had like a coffee bar with different creamers and different types of coffee, little to go cups. We had a little balcony out of the front at Zion. Bathrooms were very spacious. And I also thought it was interesting that their bathrooms, both like shower and bath, were tiled. So it wasn't just some kind of like surround. There was like attention to detail, robes and towels and things like that. But yeah, there was a pool, very nice pool, restaurant, like I said, a bar with games in it. So everything you really needed on site, even though you spend a lot of time outside of the hotel when you're, taking adventures through the park. But the hotel itself, you could really just check in and not have to leave.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So truly a resort, and you had the wonderful views as well, right? And
Surrounded.
so, so when we were looking at the different options,
Mhm.
Springdale is the town where Zion actually is, and there are several different options up and down the way. But I know your taste, Rachel, and it's a lot like mine too. And so some might call us a little bougie, but I was really hoping that it lived up to the hype that I was seeing online. So that's good, good to know. And then was it similar in Moab since it was the same brand? I know they had kind of done some remodeling
Mm.
there. But what were your
Yeah.
thoughts?
The big difference was kind of the atmosphere and the environment in which like the hotel was set in. So in Zion, like I said, it was much more neighborhood walkable. In Moab, you're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. It's almost like you're in this like valley in between the mountains and you have the river running right behind the hotel. So it's hard to say, but I think the scenery was even better in Moab, and that's really stretching it because the scenery was incredible in Zion. But the hotel rooms were maybe a little larger, but different setup. So you had the bathroom and the lighting with the closet and all those, cute little elements. But you had a large bed, and then you would step down into like your living and kitchen area. And they had a very large kitchen area at Moab, very
Wow.
large, larger than my kitchen almost at home. So it was pretty large. And then you had the sliding doors that went directly out into a patio, and the river was right there. You could hear it. They had outdoor furniture surrounded by the mountains. It almost kind of felt like a little Western ranch as far as how it was set up. But then you walk into the main area where you check in, and it was completely different than the outside. Very elevated, a wonderfully like nicely decorated bar. The restaurant was gorgeous. You could go out on the back patio. I thought it was really neat that at the Red Cliffs Lodge in Moab, they told us we had a $25 a day. I guess we had to use it like an expense that was included. So every day we would go down there and we would get like snacks and drinks from the little area to use our expense. But again, everybody was so helpful. My husband lost his glasses while we were there.
Oh, no.
So they were really helpful in like mailing packages and things like that. So yeah, it was stunning. The drive in to the Red Cliffs Lodge in Moab was like unbelievable. You didn't get tired of the drive at all.
Yeah. Maybe your eyes got tired because you were just looking at everything all the
So
time.
true. So true. Yeah.
So hopefully Garrett could see since he lost his glasses.
Sort of. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so did they find his glasses? You said shipping
They,
them.
they did. They found them. We did the Slot Canyon tour, and he left them on the vehicle that took us through the Slot Canyons. But we had to wait a couple days because they were closed, but they were found, and all is well.
Okay. So did I have on your packing list to have backup glasses?
You
Because
did.
that's one of
Did
my
Garrett
things.
listen to you? No, but Christy did have it on the packing list.
Okay. Okay. So just this is known. This is why you should have your backup glasses
It was
or
not you.
maybe an extra pair of contacts or something like that. So
Absolutely.
you want to be able to see everything. Oh,
Mhm.
so wonderful. Well, I'm glad. I
Mhm.
think probably the kitchen at Moab is probably a good idea, especially since it's so far removed from the
Yes.
downtown area. And if you're too tired, you could, you could take leftovers back or you could make a small meal or something like that. So that's
Yes.
awesome. Oh, I know, Rachel. I want to follow this exact itinerary and stay at the very same places. So I told
Mhm.
you be prepared because we're going to Utah. So and you guys are very adventurous in the
Mhm.
way that you don't want to just get on a bus and have somebody trek you through the national parks and kind of point out things to you. You want to really be out there. And you
Mhm.
talked a little bit about the Slot Canyon tour. Can
Mhm.
you expand on any of those great excursions that you did?
The Slot Canyon tour in Zion, which is outside of Springdale but very, very close, is an absolute must. I had never been in anything like a Slot Canyon, and it was stunning. The tour company that we went through and our kind of leader through our tour, he was so helpful. He was like a young 22-year-old man, and he does this on the day to day. And he also is a big, adventurer himself. He knew every single angle for every single picture, and he had us climbing up on rocks. He's like, I promise it's going to be a great picture. So we didn't even have to think about where should we take pictures or what should we take a picture of. He led us through that very well, was so kind, and gave us all kinds of information. So Slot Canyons must. We did Hell's Revenge in Moab, another must. It gets kind of a bad rep because it's supposed to be like this really intense terrain, and you better know how to drive, and can you do this or can you do that? Jer and Mandy are not avid drivers of any like off-road vehicle, and they did perfectly fine. Yes, there's inclines and you're going straight down in little narrow areas, but they're not doing anything to harm you. We were on that tour with like 6 and 7-year-olds, and they were killing it. So I was
So
like,
you
we
were
can do this.
driving yourselves
Yes,
on
yes.
all of these tours, or was there one where you rode?
Well, Slack Canyon, he took us out, and then we just walked through. Hell's Revenge, we drive kind of in a line, and then the Arches tour, which we also did in Moab, was we were driven by someone, but we would get out at each stop and be able to explore for a time period, which was really nice for the Arches tour specifically because we did almost the entire national park. in a short amount of time because we were able to travel from place to place within the park and get out. So it was really, really cool. Even at the Arches tour, he took us to the original homestead of the man that originally moved there and kind of founded that area. And it was really cool to see that. It's still standing and just the beautiful arches. But the company we went through for all of the tours were so wonderful. They sent nightly reminders the day before. They were very thorough with what you should wear, bring, take, very friendly. Checking in and checking out was super easy, and they give you free popsicles every time you leave their tour. So we definitely took them up on
Ooh.
that.
All right. So let's talk about Bryce Canyon because you didn't get to spend very long there, but you had done some research and had found a very unusual accommodation. So
Mhm.
tell us about Clear Sky.
Okay, so that is like our number one change we would make is we would have probably spent one more day in each location. We felt like we could have had one more day. Now, did we get everything in? Yes, but we could have had one more day, and especially at Bryce Canyon. We traveled that day from Moab to Bryce Canyon, which is a pretty lengthy drive, a beautiful drive. We went on a route that is supposedly the most beautiful drive in North America. So we took
Mhm.
that one. It was a little longer, but totally worth it. And then when we arrived, it looked like something out of a movie. It was an entire valley surrounded by mountains with all of these clear bubble domes, large, small, medium sized. And when you check in to this, to Clear Sky, you come in and it's very like science fantasy kind of element to it. The bar is made out of steel and it's in like a weird different shape and pattern. And we checked in, they were wonderful, and the dome was perfection. You had a fridge and places to put your clothes, a really large bed with it was the most amazing bed I have ever slept on the road, and I'm on the road a lot. And you had air conditioning and heaters, extra air conditioning and extra heaters. The bathroom was stunning. It had a rainfall shower head, but it also had jets to go against your body, and the mirrors lit up and the tile was heated. And then the curtains within the dome, there were two sections, so you could close the entire dome and not see through the sky or in front of you. Or you could just close the curtain on the bottom portion so you were kind of protected from other people walking around, which we didn't see any, and you could still stargaze. And then we had a dome with a fire pit, and which is really cool is that they're electric fire pits. Obviously, being out in the desert, they're not going to allow people with actual pieces of wood. But they come out, you tell them when you want to start it. Some guy travels out there, lights the fire, and when you're done, you call him and he takes care of it and turns it off. And they had a little shuttle that would take us back and forth from our domes to the restaurant where we ate at that night. And the food was fantastic, and it's a clear dome, and you're just stargazing, and highly suggest it. They had a kids club if you take your children there, which we saw kids there. They have different yoga retreats, all kinds of different things you could do throughout the day. But we had a quick trip, but highly, highly suggest.
Yeah, yeah. So you went with teachers
We did.
who had a spring break.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you were like a Friday to Friday, I think I
Hmm. We were
remember.
Friday
Yeah.
to Friday. Yep. And if
Yeah.
you could do an extra day at each one, I think it would have been the perfect timeline.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
But Bryce Canyon was a good kind of halfway point because Moab's so far up there, and you needed to get back to Las Vegas
Yeah.
for like an afternoon flight. So that
Hmm.
that helped you.
And we left Moab or excuse me, we left Bryce Canyon that morning and drove into Vegas. We weren't rushed. Clear Sky had breakfast. We had that there. And we headed back to Vegas with more than enough time to turn in the rental and get on our flight. So it was a perfect kind of stop.
Yay, yay. So was there anything that kind of surprised you about the trip beyond the beauty? But was there anything just with any
Oh,
of the logistics?
the food, actually. I'm a foodie, amongst being a bougie hotel person. I'm also a foodie. So, like, if there's something unique as for like as far as a Michelin star restaurant or something unique in the way the restaurant is set up, I'm like, we got to try it. Like we only do this once in a while. And we had some really incredible dinners. We actually had one that was out in the desert at another kind of clear dome or hut resort. They had these kind of little huts, but the food was impeccable, and the chef came out and talked to each of us. It was like a six-seater, like six-table restaurant, very quaint and cozy. And then one night we switched to Moab and we went to Desert Bistro instead of what we had scheduled. Best change we've ever made. It was in an old home. We were there actually during Jeep Safari Week in Moab, which we didn't know. And it's basically the company Jeep takes over. And there were hundreds of thousands of extra people, which really didn't affect our time at all. Like, honestly, we just thought it was that busy all the time.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yes, but Jeep had rented out Desert Bistro that night and they still got us in, and we had such a great meal. So I was surprised. I didn't think that they were really known for the food, but the food was wonderful. Very fresh, a lot of like farm to table, local, which was a really pleasant surprise.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, yeah, I'm the same way. I'm a foodie as well. I'd rather pay a little bit more for really good food than to spend less and just eat junk. Rachel, let's talk a little bit about the idea of using a travel agent,
Mhm.
because what other people might not know out here is that Rachel is really good at planning her own travel.
Yeah.
You enjoy it. You love researching. You look up all kinds of restaurants. Whenever Rachel and I travel together, she's like, okay, so I've been researching and here's where we should go to dinner. And she's never wrong, right? So, but you had the idea that you were going to go on this trip over spring break because three of you are teachers and you train teachers. So this fit really well into your schedule. But then you were like, I need help. So tell me how this kind of transpired and what your thoughts were.
Okay, well, she's right. I am a planner. That's just who I am. I like a list. I like to have everything planned out. I want to know where we're going, when we're going, how far we're going to travel, when we need to leave, just to make the vacation flawless when you're actually there instead of adding extra stress. And I've always been the responsible party for this group. This is our 9th year traveling together. So it's always kind of been on me, but I'm a newer mom, and my season right now with work is extremely busy, and I just wasn't accomplishing what I would like in the time frame I wanted it done. I never want to wait too late for reservations or hotel accommodations because I don't want to miss out on things, and excursions too, of course. So knowing that Chrissy had taken on this new adventure, I kind of reached out to her and was like, listen, I know what I need to do. I just don't have the time to do it. So I really kind of need a partner in crime to kind of get us started and get the elements going. And then I can dig into the little details, which she offered to do also. But it was really just a good jumping off point, and the idea of kind of nailing down the accommodations, because that tended to be a little overwhelming and I didn't have the insight on where to stay. And it was super helpful. I just felt like we got started and we needed to get started.
And so, really, I have strengths for places that I've been. I've been to Disney so many times. I could practically plan that with my eyes closed. I know how to go on cruises. I've been to Europe and things, but I had not been to Utah. So I started in with what I kind of consider my superpower, which is research, right?
Mhm.
And so I started doing all of that research. And I'm not going to lie, it took a lot of time to really figure it out, especially because you were going to multiple
Right.
destinations. So we had to make sure that, first of all, it was totally doable, drivable, that you kind of went in this loop and all of those locations made sense. You weren't backtracking, spending too much time in a
Mhm.
car. And then we also had to match up the accommodations
Correct.
to you. And so, yeah, I started it and showed you some options, but then also, this is what you love to do.
I do.
So you're the one that found Clear Sky. I mean, that wasn't even on my radar. So it was fun that we could
Yeah.
figure that out
Mhm.
together in
Yes.
that
It
way.
was very much like a collaborative effort. So loved it.
Yeah. And then all of your food
Mhm.
options, right? Like, so guys, Rachel made a Google Doc with all of the different places that they might eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner with links to the websites and everything. It was just so cool.
Mhm.
So, and that can always be changed up a little
For
bit,
sure.
right? You
Yeah.
didn't have to follow it verbatim, but it's nice to kind of have that starting point.
Mhm.
So, it you are the ideal client for
Mhm.
a travel agent because you are a busy professional. You have a lot on your plate with work. And as you said, you are a newer mom with a lovely toddler. And
Mhm.
so you've got a lot going on, and it shouldn't feel like a whole chore, to plan a vacation. It should be a lot of fun. So, did you feel like the parts that you did do, was that fun to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I felt like you gave me like such a solid outline and the foundational elements, and then when I had time I could put my little spin on it, but you also offered and were always there to, offer support if I had questions or thoughts on certain things. So absolutely enjoyable.
When I work with a client,
Hmm.
I have what I call professional design service. And so, what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of travel agents start with a small fee, a couple $100s, or depending on the type of trip, as a professional design service. And that's what they actually charge the client to get started.
Correct.
And then all of the work that goes on, behind the scenes planning the trip, then a lot of these accommodations and excursions and everything, they have a commission built in that goes back to the travel agent after the clients have traveled. And
Mhm.
that's really how travel agents make their money, is with the commission from the Hilton or Disney or Royal Caribbean or whatever. And so if people don't use a travel agent, then that company keeps the money.
Mhm.
So really, the only thing that most clients are out is that initial professional design service. And again, different agents charge different things, but it's usually around a couple $100s. So how do you feel about that type of fee?
Okay.
Do you feel it's worth it? What are your thoughts?
Well, when you initially told me about the fee, my reaction was, that's it? I thought it was going to be much more expensive than what it was. And I thought, for all the work that I knew goes into planning a vacation, I was extremely surprised at how low of a fee it was. Do I think it's worth it? 100%, because I saw what you gave me and the time and effort you put into videos and explaining things and list and images and mapping things out, not just one way, but various different ways for us to take. I mean, if you broke that down into an hourly, payment, it would be nothing compared to what you charged. It was very little. So do I think it's worth it? 100%. And so much that she's already planning another one for me. So
There you go. So you were talking a little bit about how we communicate,
mhm,
and the best way to communicate with a travel agent, honestly, is through email.
mhm,
We can text, and a lot of times I'll text and say, "Hey, I sent you an email."
mhm,
But an email is the best way to kind of keep record of what's going on back and forth. And so I would email you. I would send you some little video clips to watch. I would share my screen with some of the different details and things. So how did you feel about the communication back and forth from the time we started planning to really up until like a week or so right before you left? What did you think about that?
the communication was clear, it was concise, it was consistent. It was just what you needed. It didn't feel too overwhelming. It also didn't feel like I was like, hello, are you there? I felt like we had the information we needed, even more probably than what we needed, but I like that. And then the evening, or not the evening before, but a couple days before, Christy met with us and kind of walked us through how to use the website and what we should pack. And I thought that was really nice, to take an hour out of your time just to make sure we're prepared for all things. So communication, A plus.
All right. Yeah. And so you and I were the ones that were really talking about this back and forth. So, like, you're the lead contact, primary traveler, but then we brought in your husband, we brought in the other couple so that they could understand what was going to happen, before the trip. So everybody communication is important. It's
It
really,
is.
really important.
And the app is very helpful for the communication.
Well, so I was getting ready to ask you about that. So I use a Turn app,
Mhm.
TERN is the name, and we had everybody in the party download it.
Mhm.
And then on that app, that's where you and I communicated different options of resorts and things in the planning process. That's also where you authorized payment in a very secure location. But then it's really helpful when you're on the trip because everything shows up in the order, the
Mhm.
day, the time. You have confirmation numbers, all of that. So, did you guys use the app at all when you were on the trip?
Yes, we used it often, daily, hourly, honestly. It was really good at like addresses, phone numbers, travel details, reservation times, check in and check out times. Even within the app during our excursions, there were like little blurbs about what to wear, what not to wear, what to bring, what not to bring. We used it all the time. It was like a constant phrase, like, oh, just look on the app. So, yes, the Turn app, TERN, was great.
That's great. Well, I'll tell you what, when we had that meeting a couple days before, and your husband Garrett saw the app, and guys, Garrett is all things tech, right? That's what he's in charge of at a school district. And so when Garrett said, wow, this is really cool, like my heart skipped a little beat. I was like, oh, I have Garrett's approval.
So true. It's a big one when you get it.
All right. So, is there anything that you would do differently next time? I know you said you would add maybe another day on to some of your stops, but was there anything else, anything that happened? You're like, oh, we shouldn't have done it this way.
Not necessarily we shouldn't have done it this way. Obviously, adding a day on here or there, especially if you're not one for like traveling and going right into an activity, that didn't really bother us too much. But if you kind of need a little downtime, then maybe adding an extra day in. The only thing I would say I wish I personally would have researched a little bit more. I knew there were hiking paths and routes that you could take at each park, but there are so many, especially at Zion. So if I had just maybe thought that through a little bit more, like what is appropriate for us because we're not avid hikers, like we found our way in it and it wasn't a problem. That's something I would say to research. And then Christy warned us about this, but just being cautious of the shuttle schedule at Zion and how extremely busy it switches from about 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. It is night and day. You could wait for like 40 minutes if you're driving into Zion 30 minutes later. So just being cautious of that, but we followed your expertise on that and we didn't have an issue. So those are really the only things, but honestly, it was really a perfect trip.
Nice, nice. That's so great to hear. And I'm just so excited. Like, the problem with being a travel agent is then
You
you
want
want to go on all these trips that
to
everybody's going on. And
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, my list is getting longer and
I
longer
bet.
and longer. All right. So, is there a word you would use to
Mm,
describe this trip?
flawless. Flawless. But I would also say perfection. So it's like a double whammy. It was just perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Now, it looked like you had pretty good weather,
We
which
did.
we cannot control that, but it looked like you started out really warm and like almost in the 80s, right?
Yeah, there were we went one day we were like out in swimming suits. Like it was really crazy, like 80s and dwindled down into like 70s and 60s, but like one little day of a spot of rain. The weather was great. We were prepared for everything just in case because Chrissy had done that research and we knew, but honestly, great weather.
Yeah. Because
Yeah,
the desert can get very cold,
can.
right?
And
The
we
sun,
experienced that in the dome when you had the air under in the day and then we're like, oh, we got to click the heat on tonight. So, yeah, it can definitely have that switch, but we were prepared, so it wasn't an issue.
nice. I
Yeah.
know. I was watching the weather and I was like, okay, as they're coming to Bryce and head back to Vegas, like it's getting them used to the Midwest weather because it was getting chilly.
Unfortunately,
All
yes.
right. So, Rachel, would you use a travel advisor again when
Yes,
you're
and I
done?
am. So yes, 100%. If you want to save yourself time, and you want to enjoy your trip from start to finish, and you want everything thought through and developed and personalized for you, then you should definitely use a trip advisor or travel agent. And I 100% would do it again, and I already am.
Yeah. Even someone who loves to plan travel all on her own.
You can
Yeah.
still plan little bits, but the structure's there, which is great. Yeah.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. All right. Well, Rachel, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to meet with me and talk about your wonderful spring break vacation in Utah. And so I'm very excited to follow this exact same route. And we're going to get working on your next vacation.
Yay.
Rachel's experience is such a great example of what I see often. She enjoys the planning process, but doesn't really want to carry the full weight of it while trying to balance her work and family life. By working together, she was able to stay involved with the parts of the planning that she likes, like dining, while I was able to handle the overall structure, logistics, and flow of the trip. Her only feedback after visiting Zion and Arches and Bryce Canyon National Park was that she wishes she had a little bit more time at each location. And that's a sign of a well planned trip. If you're a busy professional who doesn't have time to do the planning, or maybe you just want to do a little part of the planning process, but you want someone else to take over all of the other details, then reach out to me. That's exactly how I help my clients. If you are interested in planning your next vacation, I am Christy at Harbor and Holiday Travel Company. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to help you with this process. But wherever you go on vacation, I hope you find joy in the journey.